Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to have a conversation about AMD and whether or not we expect to see higher prices in the very near future. Now, as some of you might remember, I did make a video about AMD on June 20th, not too long ago. As we look on the screen right now, and as I bring up AMD, just take a look at the chart. It was specifically during this day here where we had this massive candle, right? This was a pretty big day. You know, as we just kind of look at it from open to peak, about a 7% move. Yes, some of it came down. Yes, we did see sideways moving, but I used that day in particular to have a thesis that we're going to start seeing money rotating out of NVDA into AMD. And I'm happy to report, I believe we've begun to see just that happening. Since I got into AMD, I'm currently up nearly 10% on the position. When I made that video, I owned about 1,000 shares of AMD. As I bring up my portfolio right now on the screen, you will notice that I own 750 shares of AMD. I did not take profits. I didn't sell it for that reason. My very last video was a performance review for June. I ended up withdrawing $270,000 out of my trading account. And in doing so, I had to reduce the positionings across my portfolio. I took 250 shares out of AMD. Couldn't do anything about it. I had to just simply do it. As it stands right now, the 750 shares, I'm currently up nearly $12,000. So obviously it's been, paying off pretty well for me so far. If we go back, let's see what really happened. Clearly, most of these gains came in the last 4 days, right? In particular, 3 of the 4 of these days, massive candle ups. I mean, even today, what a finish. We're talking about top ticking near the close, right? This was the high of the day right here, just 5 minutes before close. Let's review things. Why did I even get into AMD on that day? Well, if we look at the ratios here, let's look at AMD slash NVIDIA. We'll divide that to just see the performance between the two. We'll notice that clearly throughout 2024, NVIDIA has been crushing AMD. Look at this, absolutely crushing it until this particular day here, June 20th. A candle towards AMD. AMD outperformed for the first time. And then, even though AMD has not done much over the last 2 weeks or so since that video, we're still seeing it creeping up, doing better than NVIDIA. Reason being, well, NVIDIA has dropped quite a bit. We'll get into NVIDIA's chart soon enough. And then notice that the last, 2 days in particular, we've really begun to ratchet up. If we just look at the line chart, it's a little bit more visible here, right, as we look at that. Now we can do the same and look at SMH, which is one of the most popular semiconductor ETFs out there. The same thing can be found here. AMD has been one of the weakest semiconductors within this ETF, especially since March. We've bottomed same day as NVIDIA here on June 20th, and we've begun to curl back upwards. So AMD's outperforming that ETF as well. Now that day was important because if we go back to NVIDIA's chart here, notice that June 20th was a big day for NVIDIA. NVIDIA had a massive gap up. It was even higher than this, by the way, if we were paying attention. Well, this is not the pre-market price, that's why, but I'm sure the pre-market price was higher than 140. I think if we can maybe go to the 15-minute chart, we can try to grab, let's see what it was. It says 140 here. What time was this? Wait, is this grabbing the pre-markets? Yeah, the pre-market is included here. But it looks like, it says 141 here. And then what does it say here? Let me just... Yeah, here it says 140.76. I could swear that in the overnight market, it was way higher than that. But either way, NVIDIA, massive gap up, flushes down, closes near lows of the day. The same day that AMD had a phenomenal day. This day right here. It may not look that phenomenal now after you saw the last few candles here, but when it looked like this, right? Let's just zoom in a little bit. When it looked like that on the day, right? After kind of being pegged low as NVIDIA goes higher, and then you get a day like that and good value, it was pretty obvious, and that was our thesis for getting into AMD on that day. Now, has anything fundamentally changed about AMD since then? Absolutely not. And here's the deal. When you're making trades, especially within the short term, so even within 1 year's period of time, fundamentals do not matter that much. Momentum and retail or even Wall Street sentiment matters so much more. If AMD is getting crushed and people see that there's no money there, it's just continuously going down, people do not want to buy into that. Yes, you're going to find some people trying to bottom pick, but guess what? People that were trying to bottom pick AMD all throughout this because they felt that NVIDIA was way too rich, they underperformed. They underperformed the SMH ETF, as a matter of fact, right? But now we're seeing things change. Now we're actually seeing AMD take control of the reins and managing to outperform not just the ETF, but also the big dog, NVIDIA. Now, there's one thing I want to do in particular. I want us to look at the volume at each of these price levels. And the reason for that is I want to get an idea of how easy will it be for us to move higher from these levels. Now, this should be relatively self-explanatory, but this is volume per price level. So here we can see that out of this range here, right? So from, let's say, December to now, prices traded between, from here all the way up there. Most of the volume has happened at around 165. It should be kind of clear as to why. I mean, we see all the action here, right? We had a couple bottoming attempts here, It was used as resistance. Here we kind of traded in and out of it. Resistance, we had a little bit of a breakout, but that's where a lot of the volume is. After this, the next bit of volume is up here, which again, you can kind of make sense, right? A bunch of sell-offs happen at this level, maybe an attempt at support over here, but we're kind of reaching this exact point now. So why am I showing this to you guys? Well, there's a good likelihood that, we might have to chew through this level. Today, we had a phenomenal day. We, again, outperformed, NVIDIA and SMH even today. But for us to continue this, I would be impressed personally if tomorrow we manage to somehow gap up out of this and keep going. And here's the thing, if we do get past this, notice the lack of volume up above this, right? There's been very little transactions that occurred because of how quickly the move up and down has been. Now, this is important. Imagine, for example, we saw a lot of volume that occurred at 200. Just imagine that. We had a massive bar at 200. Well, at 200, we would find people that went long there, that have been trapped this whole time, because some people don't cut their losses and they just hold on to things, and they rolled the trip all the way down to 140, and we're down 30% nearly, or 25%. So we have these longs at 200. We have people maybe shorted at 200 as well. Okay, if price approaches this, the ones that were long are going to look at their P&L and be like, wow, I'm finally break even. Thank God. Let me just get out of this trade. I am done looking at it. So these people that were trapped long will be providing that selling pressure. Well, we don't see that happening up here, okay? There's not enough transactions. There's still going to be people out there that were still happy as hell. They finally break even. They're going to be selling out of the stock for that reason, but not enough to really matter. That's normally what kind of provides these little support and resistance levels. It's very often it's people either they were trapped and they get out of their position. It could have been someone that was profitable, right? And it kind of worked back against them and they don't want the trade to go into the red, so they also exit out of it. It could be a short, right? Imagine it was a big bar, and the short kind of wrote it down or something, and the price comes back up there, they're going to buy into it, buy the stock back. Because, sure, at one point they were profitable on it, but now it's about to be red and they don't want to be red on it, so they get out of the trade too. But we don't see that volume up here, which is good. It does tell us that, hey, we get over this let's say 185 region, 180, 185 region, we can coast up higher. How high we can go? Absolutely no clue. Anyone who gives you a target is just throwing random numbers at you. As I said before, fundamentals not really going to matter so much now. It's all about momentum. NVIDIA clearly doesn't have the same momentum that it had before, at least not at this moment. Can it pick up? Can things pick up for it? Sure. I mean, even today we had an attempt to get back over 130 for NVIDIA, right? Got rejected back under, but it could definitely make another attempt higher. Now the question I have for myself though is, okay, if NVIDIA does manage to get back over 130 and does attempt to make a run for it, will money come back out of AMD? That's a good question. I have no clue. But if we put the two charts side by side, let's say NVIDIA and AMD, obviously there's a lot of differences between the two. But, as of late, right here, AMD is hitting, was it the highest level it's been at since March, right? NVIDIA is still kind of chilling quite a bit. I mean, how much does it have to continue to move up high just to get to all-time highs? About 10%. Again, if NVIDIA goes crazy, gets over 130, it will likely actually make a trip towards 140, to be honest, right? I guess there could be a lot of people trying to short it ahead of time and longs try to exit, in case it's a double top. But I can imagine at the very least, NVIDIA will try to attempt to get past it, even if it means to be a little bit of a bull trap, pulling some people, hit, say, 142, 143, 145, get some people in on the breakout, reverse lower. It might do something like that. How it affects AMD, I'm not so sure. All I know right now, AMD is obviously being favored by the market. We're also not going to be cutting AMD just because it's moving up much higher and because I have some profits on the trade. To survive in this game, there's a very important rule, which is that you must let your winners run. That is it. You cannot take profits. The biggest line, which is a lie in my opinion, is that no one went broke taking profits. That's not true. You do go broke with taking profits because your profits are too little to make up for your losses, and everybody has losses. It's as simple as that. You cannot survive this game of small wins. You survive this game with big wins. All the greatest investors, traders out there, they're not out there with a 95% success rate on their trades. Very often, their success rate is under 50% of their trades. Why is that? That's because they get into a trade, it doesn't work, they cut it quick. That is it. They got no problem taking these paper cut losses. So they might only have a 30% win chance because guess what? They're cutting their losses quickly. But they're fantastic traders or investors simply because when a trade does work in their favor, they hold on to it for weeks on end, months on end, and so forth. Obviously, if you're an extremely short-term trader, it's a little bit different. But the point being, we're going to let things ride, okay? I've got no clue what the target is. I'm not going to cut it just simply because, it's currently over here. Does that mean I might give some back? Does it mean I might end up giving back a lot? Sure, okay? But we've held on to this trade now for 2-3 weeks. It's had a very nice breakout. Yes, NASDAQ has also performed extremely well, so we do have that as a backdrop. I'm not going to ignore the fact that, clearly NASDAQ has been pushing up the market. But at the same time, if we look at SMH, for example, it hasn't hit highs for the year. It's on the way there. Obviously, it's also outperforming NVIDIA. Looking at NVIDIA's chart over here, but when it comes to AMD, AMD is doing quite better over the last month or so. For those of you that haven't had a chance to get into AMD, is this the time to get into it? It's tough, I'll be honest with you, right? Some of you might look at it as chasing the stock. I mean, I've kind of mentioned this already, right? We're looking at a zone here, right? And the zone is essentially right there. I mean, this activity levels that we've seen at around the 181, 185 region, I don't expect for us to cut through like butter. I don't expect for us to do that. But if I were looking to get into an entry and I wanted to have some line in the sand, that's where I would be looking. I'd be looking for a break past that. And more importantly, watch how AMD is trading against NVIDIA and watch how it's trading against SMH. We want to see this outperformance continue. We don't want to see 2-3 days underperformance. That might tell us, that might signal to us, let's start sizing down because maybe this was it, okay? It doesn't, again, us being in this trade, the thesis working out for as long as it has does not mean it will continue to work out. This might have been a short-term thing. Maybe we end up giving up half of our profits away and realizing that, okay, it's over, but we do have to consider that. So if I was looking for an entry again here, this is what I'll be looking at, right? Up to this 185, 187, do not rush into it. If you see a break to like 190 intraday, 11:37 a.m. on some day in July, don't rush into it. Wait for the close. Notice these rejections on the wicks here, okay? Wait and see how things close. What do traders do with it? You might get into it, be trapped into it, and the stock goes from 190 down to 184 same day. Clearly, AMD moves quite a bit. But those are my thoughts on AMD. If you enjoyed this video, shoot it a like. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content such as this and some other future trades of mine. Other than that, have a great week and good luck out there.